To get better access to the instrument panel, I took the boot cowl off because it goes underneath the windscreen. The windscreen needed to come out anyway because it was cracked, so this is the process of how to do that. The screw heads were full of paint, so I took a pick to dig the paint out first, which gave me better bite with the screwdriver. Some of the screws were really rusty and hard to get out, so you'll see me using a pair of vice grips to try and grab the heads because they stripped out. Since I'm replacing the screws anyway, this really doesn't matter if the heads get damaged or the screws snap off. Some of the screws I had to drill the heads off of, which you saw me do a little bit earlier. At this point, with them all out, you can start to remove the piece of metal that holds the windscreen to the boot cowl and clean up some of the RTV that someone had used to seal the windshield. The only thing holding the boot cowl on at this point are the defrost ducts. Once they're off, the boot cowl comes off as one piece, and we can gain access to the back of the instrument panel.
And in that time I was able to get the rest of the top skins drilled off and get the seats out of the interior, which means I'm now ready to start demodding the instrument panel. This is what the fuselage looks like with all the top skins drilled off. And as you can see, these side skins are off as well, but the problem I have now is they wrap around underneath. So I've got to figure out a way to lift up the frame so that I can slide these out. The seat removal was pretty straightforward. There's two little black knobs up front that control these pins and catch holes on the seat so that it can slide back and forth. And basically all you need to do is get it slid all the way forward and then push this pin, which acts as a block. It catches the frame member with the pin that engages these holes. You just push that up and slide it out. The back seat was a little more complicated. It has a foot on this side that picks up this hole so it slots in and slides back. And then over here, it's the same basic idea. There's a screw that picks up that hole and just sits in there. As you can see over here, I've also taken the boot cowl off, which gets me access behind the instrument panel without having to get into the airplane and lean over things, which will make it a lot easier because the airplane's kind of wobbly right now. As you can see, the instrument panel is made up of two parts with a radio stack in the middle. The pilot's side has an overlay, and then the gauges are screwed to the panel's main structure behind, while the co-pilot side are all essentially screwed to a plate, which comes out as a full assembly. So this is the back of the co-pilot's instrument panel, and if you look here and here, you can see the wiring for the fuel tanks. Now, if this were just a basic mod, a basic avionics mod, or a couple instruments were being replaced, I would take these nuts off, label the wires, and call it a day. But I'm rewiring this entire airplane because frankly most of the harness is gone. What's left is cut, and it's all original to the airplane. So this wire right here has been here since 1957. So it's time for an upgrade. So I'm just gonna dike the wires, and that'll allow me to remove the instrument panel. The other thing we have hooked up, this is the back of the tachometer. This cable runs along this structural member here and out the firewall to the tach drive port on the engine. So
There's a little cup in here that's spun by the cable, which gives you your RPM on the face of the gauge, and the cable inside the conduit is spun by the accessory case on the back of the engine. With the wiring and the tach drive cable disconnected, we can now pull the co-pilot side instrument panel. Access to the pilot side instrument panel will be made easier by removing the pilot side window. Removing the pilot side overlay gives access to the instruments screwed to the panel. Once you have access to the mounting screws, you can pull all the instruments out. So now that the instruments are out, I've separated them into what's original and what someone stuck in the panel so that they could say it was a complete panel. This airplane didn't have a constant speed propeller, so a manifold pressure gauge wouldn't have been necessary, and it always just would have read ambient pressure with the engine off and whatever the vacuum was with the engine running. This oil temp, oil pressure, and cylinder temp gauge is out of a Beechcraft. It's old, but it's not that old. And like I say, not original to the airplane. This is a Cessna clock, which might be original, might not. I'm not entirely sure, but you can pull this knob out and set it so if you hook 12 volts up to the post, it might actually run. Might be worth saving, I don't know. The fuel gauges, they're both the same, so I'll just show one. A minute ago they were reading full, but I guess taking them apart and messing with them changed something, I don't know. But I don't know if you can see it down there, but it's actually the AC stamped in the back is AC Delco. So they're GM gauges. The tachometer looks to be original. And this is another one, if you look, it's kind of faded and crusty, but it actually says AC Division GMC, Flint, Michigan. So, you know, another repurposed, and it says it on the face too, down at the bottom, AC. Don't know if it works. Don't know if it's original, probably original, but it'll probably end up getting replaced. Rate of climb gauge, showing a 250 foot per minute descent right now. A certification date is September 23rd. It looks like 1955, but it may be 1958. This is a 1957 airplane, so depending on, I'd have to look in the logbook and see when the first flight was, but depending on when the first flight was and the delivery, that gauge makes sense either way as far as the date. This altimeter doesn't have a date on it, but I've set it to standard sea level pressure, and it's reading about 750 feet. I think the elevation here, the GPS elevation on my phone was about 900 feet. So I don't know how the two correlate. So I don't know if that's reading accurately or not, but it moves freely, so it might be able to be overhauled and recertified. Turn coordinator, you can see the ball move. They say when you're in a turn, step on the ball, make sure everything's lined up, but its original date is August 26, looks like 1957, so fairly certain that's original to the airplane. This enormous thing is an artificial horizon, which currently shows us in a right descending bank. It's a vacuum driven gyro. The port's right there. So without the gyro, it is an actual gyro. I don't know if you can hear it in there, but without the gyro spooled up, I don't know how to tell if it's accurate or not. But it does look like it's got glow in the dark paint on the face. We'll see if we turn out the light. It does in fact glow, and it's probably radioactive, being from the 50s. So, and just, you know, sheer size alone will replace that. And last but not least is the directional gyro. And it somewhere on here said 1957. I can't find it right now, but that also looks like a glow-in-the-dark instrument. So I'll probably be growing a third limb by the time this is over, just because of that. This is the co-pilot's instrument panel. I'm gonna save this. I want to use it as a template to draw in SolidWorks, because I'll cut another blank out, and then whenever I decide what's going in it for avionics, that'll be a good tool, because I can use that to make a blank to pick up the original hole over there. The pilot side, for whatever reason, is not set up the same way. But there's a couple things I can do. You know, we can cut a big hole out there for whatever we put in there and keep the original panel, which would probably be the easiest thing. But if you come around here, these cutouts in this flange are because this panel is hand formed, it's not stamped. So what they did was they made relief cuts so that they could bend these tabs over and then spot weld them to a piece of aluminum running along the back. Like I say, I don't know if I'm gonna keep it or if I'm going to replace it with something new. I'll probably keep it just because it's easier. But it's held in by these knobs in the back, and the yokes will have to come off before it comes off. You can kind of see down there. So yeah, we're looking pretty good right now.